And live. Yay!
Welcome to the Wooting live stream. Today, it's a magnificent day because it's a Friday and it's a Wooting live stream day.
Yes.
Today, we have we're continuing with the platform that we've been doing with the live streams, and we have a couple of topics that we talk about. Then we do the questions, and then at the end we have an open session. But first, let's always start with how's chat doing, and wait for a moment for people to come into the stream.
Let me try something, right?
Before we start with the first topic.
Not sure how this works, but let me see if I can get a chat on the screen. Bloop. Does it work like this?
Do we have new stuff?
I don't know how it works.
We have new stuff? Cool stuff?
Yes.
UK delivery still working? I think so. There were a couple of UK deliveries that went a bit slower than usual, but as far as I know, it's still shipping. There's the fastest way to find out, other than your tracking number, is on the Wooting.store. You go there, then there's a banner on the top which talks about DHL and shipping policies things, and you just press learn more, and then you'll go to then you'll be directed to the DHL website, and there's like the latest information about shipping statuses and shipping policies that DHL has now in relation with COVID. Give me that lekker behind you. You can have mine later. Yeah, so when it comes to about slowness, the thing is that we now use, and it's not really clearly shown on the web store yet, or in the shop yet, but now we started using DHL for most of the European countries. No, if I'm right, I think, Erik, we're doing all European countries with DHL now, but only outside of Europe we ship with PostNL.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm trying to set up something.
So we ship with DHL now, which I'll update on the store. I guess there's no reason why it shouldn't be updated on the store, because we've been testing it. We didn't update it yet because we've been testing it for like a month or so before we wanted to change everything on the store. But I guess we're now at a point where we can just start changing things because it works pretty well, right? Okay, and meanwhile, I see Erik is still tweaking some stuff on the stream, like getting the chat on the stream, and we're gonna have like questions appear on the stream. Because if you might have noticed, we're now Twitch affiliates. We finally filled in the form that's been waiting for us for like half a year or something, I think. And now we can have subscribers. And some crazy people already subscribed to the channel, but really, it's not necessary. It's funny though. Wearing my Wooting socks for the Wooting stream. Yeah, nice. I think Quintas, you're the only one that has Wooting socks at this moment. I'm not. Did we make it available in the store? No, right?
No. Not.
So you're the only one with Wooting socks right now. And then from Fresh Cav, what's the story behind the name Wooting? So, wow, that's actually a pretty long story, but to make it very short, is that Wooting was a name that came up during the time that the three of us played Guild Wars together. And it kind of stuck throughout all the gaming years. And now we've also used it for our company, which is pretty stupid and funny at the same time. And basically it stands for Guild Wars. Yeah. The original Guild Wars, not Guild Wars 2. So basically Woot stands for we own the other team. And it's only that over, I think you look at Quake, Doom, Unreal Tournament times, then around that time, Woot was very popular to use in this manner. But over time, it kind of changed into this kind of cheer of joyfulness and enjoyment, whatever. So you'd say like something good happens and you say like woot. And this is kind of more a derivative of the original meaning. So wooting is basically a continuous of woot, and you can take it however you want it.
Oh, this is how it works. Okay, I now have it right. So somebody says something cool. Say something cool. Hey, will
I have to wait for the stream. I'll stop that.
So this is like a very cool question, right? Does it work? Yeah. Hey, will there be any macro capabilities added to the Wooting?
Is it showing on the stream?
Yes, of course.
Oh, there! Whoa, it looks so cool!
Sick.
See, guys, with 5 subscribers, we're putting more effort in our stream now.
This is how we roll.
It looks so nice.
Yes.
Okay, so just to clarify again, for the live stream, we're doing the same platform as we always did. And right now we're just doing a little bit of open session, and then we start getting into the topics. Every topic at the end, we answer questions related to the topic. And at the end of the stream, we have the open Q&A session, or the open session, which is basically talking about everything, ask anything, until we fill 1 hour. We try to keep it 1 hour, but most of the time it's 1 hour, 1.5 hours or something. But yeah, we'll see how this goes. Today the topics are a bit, we have a bit less topics than usual today. We just have 2, and usually we have 3 or maybe 4. And the first topic we're going to talk about is fulfillment center stuff. Basically want to update a little bit about what's happening in the US with fulfillment. I don't think there's that much to tell about Europe fulfillment. I mean, there's of course some delays here and there. I guess we can touch the topic a little bit. And then the second topic is about the Lekker Edition and the Lekker Edition update. That came out last Tuesday. And we can go deep into the questions, whatever questions come out of that one. That will be the big topic, and then we do open session. So just to close off this first part, we can answer that question that we had, right?
Yeah. Yes. Oh, it's now on screen, so...
All right.
Hey, Bang Headshot 108. Hey, will there be any macro capabilities added to the Wooting? Guess you mean the Wooting.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's yes and no. So with macros, I mean you I'm guessing you mean like these whole sequence things with all these elaborated keys pressing simultaneously on a sort of sequence. That is something that we won't add anytime soon, because there are just better programs out there like Auto Hotkey that can do the exact same thing for you. So I would recommend using that if you want like very elaborated macros. But you can sort of set up macros at the moment with DKS with 4 keys at the moment. So that's also something you can play around with if you want to have like shorter macros. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if I so that's kind of eventually that's kind of like what direction we're not taking with macros and what you can do with macros now. But we do have an idea of how we want to implement our own version of macros, which is more focused on triggering certain events at certain points, and not so much about, exactly the, like Erik was just mentioning, things you can do with Auto Hotkey, which is like exactly like, when key returns this and then this many seconds and then that and whatever, and will be more it will be more focused on activating certain events instead, which is an elaboration of the DKS in the future. Yeah. Okay. So let's get into the first topic.
Yes.
So first topic is the fulfillment in US is going a bit slower than usual, and the reason why is because I think on the 20th of March we received an email saying, hey, basically saying our fulfillment center called EasyPost, so we're using EasyPost for fulfillments in the US. They were basically saying, oh, we have some really great news to share. We got bought by another fulfillment company called Ruby Has, and they're really great. We're really glad with this new partnership with Ruby Has. And no real reasoning, like why did they sell this like fulfillment side of EasyPost to Ruby Has, and what does that exactly mean as a customer? And I was already thinking, okay, so probably a lot's going to change, but I didn't expect it to happen so soon, because I think 8 days later was another email, like 6 days later, on 26th of March was like, okay, so you either fuck off from the fulfillment center you're working with right now from EasyPost, or you move to the new fulfillment center, which is from Ruby Has, which is at a different facility. What? And we had to do it before the 1st of April. Otherwise, our stock could be considered disposable. Basically meaning they will throw away your stock because apparently we're not interested in it. Obviously, the execution didn't exactly go in that way, but that's kind of the message they were sending. And we simply just transferred to Ruby Has, but it just comes with a bunch of transitions. So one is right now the stock is moving to the Ruby Has facility, which is in Kentucky instead of Philadelphia. Is that Philadelphia? Yeah, Philadelphia. So now the stock is moving from one facility to the other facility. In the meanwhile, we're still able to take orders and send it to the fulfillment center, but they don't fulfill it until all the stock is in a new facility, which takes about a couple days. And then they need 4 working days to check it in. And in the meanwhile, when there's an issue with the shipment or we have questions, we also need to ask with the new fulfillment partner Ruby Has, but it goes very slow because obviously their customer service is overloaded of probably a lot of angry customers. So we're not getting a lot of information very fast. So there's this one really shitty example where there was a customer that ordered a keyboard on the 26th of March. And he still hasn't received it because FedEx at some point said, oh, we're unable to deliver it for unknown reasons. And I have no idea what's going on with it. And I'm getting no feedback from the 3PL. So there's this kind of annoyance right now in the US. And it will take a while before we can ship like normal again. And I think on the 20th of April, we should be able to ship things that were already in our stock by transferring. And probably on the 23rd or 24th of April, we can start shipping things that were in the meanwhile out of stock. And I need to check in new stock, which is on the way, but which will need a bit more time. And I assume there's not a lot of US people here, but if you have a Wooting 2 Blue Switch keyboard, for example, probably it will ship on the 24th, not on the 20th. If you have a different kind of keyboard, it will ship on the 20th. I think that's kind of the fulfillment issue in the US. And then in Europe, we're still shipping as scheduled, but we have different shipping schedules. So since we switched to DHL, we have every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, DHL comes by and picks up all the shipments within Europe. And then every Wednesday, we have PostNL come by, which is the local post service, which ships internationally, so outside of Europe. We haven't changed our international shipping rates, even though shipping rates have gone up for international shipping, and we're not planning to increase those shipping rates for now. And then when it comes to shipments within Europe with DHL, everything seems to be pretty going fairly smooth. But there's definitely, depending on the country, maybe delay of 2 days, 3 days. But that's also shown in the tracking information, if you look at the tracking information. Okay, that kind of like wraps up the first topic. I assume there's no questions about this topic.
Stuff, right?
It just... If you have a question about the topic, this is the time frame. Tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. No. Okay, so then we can move on to the next topic. So this is the big topic. So last Tuesday we released the Lekker Edition update, and which is update number 4, if I'm right. And it's a big update. It's the update that people that are watching this stream, the majority of the people watching this stream, I assume we're kind of expecting to receive. That we're not going to make a May shipment. And I think also that a rule of thumb is also, if we're, let's say, a month before shipping, or no, now you can say at least 2 months before you would expect it to start shipping, we need to have done mass production. That's what we can expect right now. So if you don't hear us talking about mass production, then you can't expect shipping to happen soon either. Just like a rule of thumb when it comes to expectations. Hey Freso. The big update, yeah, so we're talking about the Lekker Edition update right now. But I just started, so the big thing about the Lekker Edition update is that I don't want to say immediately like, oh my gosh, the coronavirus totally fucked up everything, and now we're totally behind with everything, and we're in trouble. I think what the coronavirus has done though is it has really highlighted, and I think I mentioned here as put exclamation marks on places where we need to pay more attention. And one of the biggest things that is delaying us and keeping us and withholding us from starting any kind of mass production is the switch factory. So we can't do a production without the switch factory, and that's also the area where the coronavirus has definitely had an impact, but it has an impact in that priorities have been placed. So with the switch factory in the past, and I think if you read in the previous updates, you can see that we've always been trying to, with the switch development, we've always been trying to make some improvements. And we've worked, I remember in one of was it October updates? The update where we talk about opening a mold to make it hot swappable and everything.
It's probably October.
I also cover a point where, sorry?
It's probably October around the time.
Yeah, exactly. So that time I also talk about, we were very, together with Kevin, we were really busy trying to figure out how to make improvements to the switch. In fact, we actually had a whole different switch design after Computex. Took us some time, and in the end, the switch factory said, "Okay, no, we can't make this like whole new design. We can only make partial changes, because if we make the whole new design, they need to start making big changes to the assembly machine." And I think I mentioned also in that update is that the assembly machine is actually the most expensive part about assembling the switch, not necessarily the mold for the switch. So then around that time, we also visited the factory. We looked at the assembly machine, and we looked at how can we make improvements and how can we make sure that we don't need to make a whole new assembly machine and still make the switch hot swappable and make these improvements. That took us some time. We got through it, and we pushed our design. And the switch factory agreed to our changes and our proposal, and they agreed to make a sample switch. But even making the sample switch, took longer than we'd want it to happen. Thankfully, we got it before Chinese New Year, which is good. Gave us enough time to look at it, give some feedback, and make changes if we needed to. But we already had some issues where it came to communication was fairly slow. We wanted to make these changes, and they were a little bit reluctant to make changes. They really wished us to use the first generation switch, but we still convinced them to make the changes. And then after Chinese New Year, the whole virus thing started to grow, and the first delay happened, and saying, okay, they can't open tooling because their employees are stuck in Hubei area. okay, that sucks, right? But we're already looking at, okay, but as soon as they're done, right? This is the feedback. These are the drawings, and then when they're back, they can get started. And then when they get back, and we're kind of pushing to get the final tooling started, we get the message from the factory is basically saying, okay, we don't have the time right now, the time and resources right now to do the tooling now. We have to. We're on a backlog of the virus, and there's other customers with more priority right now, and those need to be done first. You need to wait. And they don't have a schedule yet when they can start on our project, on our tooling. And I think once we received this message from the Switch factory, that's a very scary message to receive, because basically what they're telling me is, okay, this whole virus thing is hitting us pretty hard. We're behind our schedule, and right now your project is not profitable enough to put more attention to, especially with the things we're going through right now. That's how I receive. That's how I interpret the message. And obviously, that's not a message that I want to hear, and it's definitely not a message that I want to be. It's definitely not something that I want to be waiting on. If anything, is that we really, really do not like to put full dependency on one party, and that party not giving any kind of clear information or any transparency in what the next step is or intentions. It's kind of the same way, I guess it's the same way how, in the same way how we communicate to you guys, right? How we try to, every step in the way, try to communicate what is the situation now and what are the next steps, so we can get to the point where we want to be. We want the same from our suppliers, right? But we're not getting it from them. So when I'm in this kind of situation, I really start to feel like, okay, definitely not going to wait for this. We're not going to sit back and just see what happens next. So we have two things running right now that have a potential, and those are two things I just can't talk about right now. I can't go into it at all, and that's merely just already for the reason because it's still in motion. There are negotiations going on, and if I start talking about it right now, any kind of information I make public right now about this can potentially influence it, and I don't want to do that. So I already know that for our blog updates, the live streams, I don't know for sure yet, but the blog updates are definitely read by a couple of our suppliers. They keep an eye on it, and it really sucks that they do, because that means that I need to be very careful with what kind of things we share. I've once already received it's not a big complaint, but a small complaint from a supplier when we didn't necessarily say something negative, but we talked more. I'm not going to say specifically who and what, but we talked about some kind of like, let's say, we need to, I don't know. I shouldn't say anything specific. Well, we mentioned something. It's not negative. It's not positive. It's just neutral, and it's just a fact. But in their eyes, it's seen as something negative and something that is not good for them. So I'm just going to keep it to that. So I don't want that to influence the current negotiations. So this is, let's say, when you read the update and when you look at the Lekker edition project right now, this is the biggest influence part, because no switch is no keyboard. Doesn't matter what else we do.
True. No switch is no keyboard. That's a pretty hefty statement, but it's true.
Yeah. So if you have specific questions about this part of the update, you're welcome. I mean, if you have questions in the meanwhile, or something that pops in your mind, just throw it in the chat, and we can cover it nearing the end, or if it's relevant for this part of the topic, we can tackle it straight away.
All the questions we save with this cool new tool we have.
We want to use the new question tool, guys.
Yes. It took me 10 minutes to set up, so it better be worth the effort.
Yeah. And then newcomer said, "Oh, what did I miss? Called it just. I just explained like one of the most important parts of the whole thing, but okay."
Ooh, here's a question. Finally.
This lacquer shirt is probably never going to be available for purchase. That's probably the case.
It's also a pretty high-end lacquer shirt because the lacquer thing is embroidered. Embroidered?
It's embroidered. You mentioned improvements to the lacquer in the blog. Can you say more about that? Oh, wait, sorry. Wait, that was the wrong one. Is that lacquer shirt? Oh, wait. Oh, we're jumping from one question to the other. So yeah, the lacquer shirt's not available for purchase and won't be available for purchase. Yeah, I know. The Switch is actually pretty cool. Yeah. Yeah, we used it for Computex. Yeah. Maybe sometime, but no. Okay, then the next one you mentioned improvements to lacquer in the block. Can you say more about that? All right, so I'll jump on the improvements part. I'll jump in the improvement part later, Eric.
Okay.
What I can show is, for example, here. So here, this is one of the. I need to see my camera. There we go. So to close the Switch topic, you can see here I have. These have a blue stem because it's from the sample tooling, but this is the sample tooling from the final Switch. Just the stem color is not correct, so you can totally ignore that. But this has the hot swappable design.
Focus,
so,
please.
Focus. Yeah, it's not gonna focus. So here, see, now we can take it out, and you can see here the design that you can see in the 3D render we posted, and also my previous post where I went a bit more into the design of the new Switch. Oh, God, Jesus. I should just never try this, but I still keep trying it. Anyway, you can see there's like a hot swap mechanism in it now, and I can just pop it back in. So this is this is the keyboard I'm talking about in the update. It's super frustrating because I have this basically near final keyboard right here with all the sample switches inside, and I can hot swap it, and it works. But yeah, it's a waiting game. Okay, so
this is a very interesting question, though. From Roadkiller, except the switches, do you plan on any design modifications besides the switches?
From, let's say, modifications from this design you see right here, this is going to be the final design when it comes to colors and everything. The one you see in Eric's background is not final. He has the wrong top plate, for example. This is the correct top plate. Let me think. Yeah, this is really the final keycaps, final top plate, final bottom case, the feet.
I think we also
I don't have the cable.
But we also have
I don't have the cable
right?
here.
The final cable.
Yeah, I don't have the cable here. Kevin has the cable.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when it comes to the design part, that's all final. Yeah.
Okay, we'll jump into the Wooting meetup question after this whole topic here, but we'll get back to it later in the stream.
Okay, so then another thing from the update and delaying what's potentially delaying the project, but again, right now the biggest thing is the Switch itself and opening final tooling. That is the biggest thing. We're also planning to move from assembly factory, and we touched this actually in the last live stream, where we're now at a point where we're finalizing some details with a new assembly factory, and then we're going to do the Lacquer Edition update at this assembly factory. And the reason behind switching from assembly factory, well, there's a couple of reasons, but the most important thing is that we've been working with one assembly factory for all this time, and we feel that we need to explore more suppliers, get more experience, and see how it is with other suppliers as well. And so this is on the one side, like we want to expand our knowledge and experience and see how other factories do the assembly and, you know, how they deal with certain orders with a keyboard. And then there's a risk part where we don't want to fully rely, just like now with the Switch stuff, right? We don't want to fully rely on just one supplier. Because if we fully rely on one supplier, it means that that supplier can also dictate to us what we can and cannot do. And we don't want any supplier to dictate to us what we can and cannot do. What we want is to do what we want to do and find a supplier that can do it for us, or find a supplier that can do what we want to do. And therefore, we must always broaden our broaden our viewpoint, don't get into tunnel vision, and never let a supplier determine what our capabilities are or what the capacity is of Wooting. And an assembly factory is a big part of it, because that links into other suppliers as well. It's a real big network of suppliers that come together with an assembly factory, basically. So I think there is a good example. No, there's not a good example there. So we're switching to from assembly factory for the lacquer edition, finalizing the details. Don't see big problems coming up for it, and also looking forward to it. Okay, and then we can start jumping into then was the final thing when it comes to delays. Logistics. You can expect logistics right now is up in the air in the way of air freight. I mean, I covered in the update, right? It just comes down to that air freight is super expensive, not doable anymore. Usually it's something we do if we delay the project or the project delays. We usually just start doing air freight or train in Europe, or do partial train, partial air, this kind of stuff, just so we can deliver faster. But that's not going to happen now because it's crazy expensive to do air freight right now. So we need to do train or boat. Train still need to double check. But let's say we do everything by boat. There's like 45 days in.
I think train is really risky, to be honest, at the moment, because probably the train, you know, it stops at certain points through outer world, like Russian and some other European countries. And I think at the moment, with all the corona and the COVID-19 thing going on, you want to avoid moving your product through all these different kind of countries, because maybe they have like other regulations.
That's a good point.
I think so. It's also something we need to investigate once we get closer to actually delivering the product. So it's very difficult at the moment to have a final thing in it.
From experience, I wouldn't go with train. Boat shipping is pretty safe from China. Well, we've done train a couple of times before, and it's fairly fast. It goes to Hamburg in Germany, and then by truck does the last mile to our warehouse in the Netherlands. Funny enough, though, the departure station with train, I think for this one is in Wuhan area. But the thing is just right now, I don't know from I don't have any information from our forwarder about train freight, and I don't know what the status is right now for train freight. But if there's any type of risk involved, or things change, like Erik just mentioned, or things change because the virus, that will not be an option, or it's all of a sudden crazy expensive. Who knows? Then it's going to be boat shipment as well. But train is only possible for Europe, so not for US.
Okay, let's go through some questions, because there are a bunch of cool questions.
Yes.
So let's start with Nicking44. How much flex to the case is there? Also, have you checked the durability of how materials are. So the durability and the flex of the lacquer keyboard.
Right. So since we use the same case as the Wooting 2, it's the same. So I mean, we are known for not having a lot of flex in our keyboards. So usually when you have a cheaper Chinese branded, or let's say $40 mechanical keyboard, those have usually a lot of flex because the plastic they use is recycled plastic or inferior ABS plastic, which is like a high percentage of recycled ABS.
I always think it's interesting that some people, you'll see a lot of keyboard reviews, right? Where reviewers determine the quality of the keyboard by the amount of flex it has. And there is some truth to it, but overall it's kind of bogus. Because you can have a soft plastic material and still have a high-end keyboard, and it will have some flex. And I think in some cases having flex means that the keyboard is even more durable because it can withstand drops better than a hard plastic. So it's it doesn't say that much about the quality of a keyboard, the amount of flex it has.
I guess, but maybe it's also kind of a thing where when something has more weight, you feel there's more quality to it. Well,
that's true.
Yeah. But there's definitely, like, if there's a lot of flex in the keyboard, there's two things you can look at. That's the keyboard design, how it's constructed, and also the quality of the plastics that are used. So, like I just said, ABS, if there's a high percentage of recycled ABS plastic inside, then it will have more flex, and the finish of the plastic part will also be less good, or they painted over it. And then the second thing is in the bottom case. Our bottom case, for example, has a honey grid inside the bottom case, which increases the rigidity of the keyboard, and it's also what the PCB lands on. But there's also bottom cases where it's just all hollow and just has a couple of standoffs where things stand on, and that also increases flex. Okay.
This one is interesting. From the Friendly Squid, how is the noise level of the lacquer switches versus a Cherry MX Red, for example?
Oh, noise is such a big topic because noise has relatively little to do with the switch itself. It does. Oh my gosh. Okay, there's a lot of variables when it comes to noise. Let's say that you can put the switch into the center point.
Do you have a Cherry switch there?
Sorry?
Do you have a Cherry switch there and a lacquer switch? Then we can compare them in a hand.
Well, I have a keyboard that has a really satisfying sound, which I personally love a lot with Cherry switches. But I might also have other keyboard with Cherry switches, which doesn't sound as great. The point is that you can say that every switch has its own kind of like signature sound, but let's say the decibels of the sound in totality and how to explain? No, let's just the decibels of the sound itself and when you take the sound spectrum, right, all the different hertz of a sound, where does it put emphasis on? Then it depends on the keyboard case. So it doesn't depend on the switch anymore. So every switch does have a certain signature, but a lot of the sound is created by the keyboard construction. So for example, with Wooting 1 and Wooting 2, we have a plastic bottom case, and because we have a cable guide underneath, let me show you here. Here's a bottom case, for example. So because, okay, you can see here's the honey grid I was talking about earlier, but you can see because we have this cable guide here, there needs to be space for the cable connection on the bottom here. And the second thing is because it's at an angle, right? You need to include an angle into the total keyboard design. But the result is that the bottom case becomes hollow for most part. So you have all this hollow space here. And when you have hollow space, it kind of like reverbs, or it kind of like, just like a guitar, when you're playing guitar, you have like this big hollow space inside the guitar where the sound like reverbs in and becomes a lot louder, versus if you wouldn't have it behind the strings. So on a keyboard, the same thing happens. So this kind of like amplifies the sound of the keyboard. Then the second thing that has a lot of impact when you look at keyboard design and construction is screw holes. So because, and there's two things you can look at. One is the screw hole, the screw connections between, let's say, in the totality, you look at screw connections of the top plate and the PCBA with the bottom case. The less screws you have, the better, and the less connection there is with the bottom case, the better. Okay, so the more connection there is with the bottom case, the more connections there is with the PCBA, the more vibrations can go throughout the whole board, which also amplifies sound. And okay, then there's a bunch of other things. So when you look at the switch itself and the keycap and how the keycap hits the top casing of the switch, and from what material is the switch made of, which will change the sound as well. You know, there's a lot of additional things you need to look at, which decides how loud a switch is, or basically how loud a keyboard is. So that's why you can't just simply say one switch is more silent than the other one, unless that switch has specific things built in to silence or reduce the amount of vibrations. For example, with cherry, with a pink switch, what was the name for those again?
Silent ones?
The silent ones, yeah.
Not sure.
I forgot the name, but the point is that inside the switch, the switch itself is like exactly the same like the red switches, but inside they just literally added some foam onto the, I forgot, it's on the top of the case, I think. They added some foam. So when the stem returns to the original position, like Erik is doing right now, he's flicking it, right?
Yeah. Well,
yeah, that noise is significantly reduced.
It's kind of unfair because I just picked up a cherry red switch, but this one is broken, to be honest, because when I pressed all the way in, the stem stays stuck. I don't know why it's doing it, but I guess this like.
You have to probably click the case together.
No, the case is pretty well together. It's not the issue. Checked it. It's weird. Is this like a cherry switch on the return? It is a select switch when I flick it.
Yeah, I mean, in general, sound, it's really shit over microphone. That's like, true. You can't determine sound over microphone. So all those videos with like a sound test of the keyboard, it's total shit. It's useless. The best thing you can get out of those sound tests is if it really sounds really total shit and crap, you know. But it's not too difficult to get past the point where you just don't notice it on one of these video sound tests, unless you have a really high quality microphone and you have a really good sound stage where you can properly record it. But probably, if I think about it, YouTube doesn't even have the proper what's the name again, the quality of the sound that comes out of YouTube, right? And the amount of detailed sound levels they can really transfer is probably not high enough. Get a studio for recording Lecker switch sound. So okay, now I'll just get back to the Lecker switch then. Okay, so there was a much more a better question you can ask, which was about comparing the Wooting 2 with the Lekker Wooting 2, right? Where is it?
It's here. It's on the screen. Wow.
Oh, okay. So the question of that I can't see, are the sound levels of the Lekker edition similar to the Wooting 2? Okay, now that is a more apples to apples comparison. So what we can say is that the Lekker switch is more bassy than the Flaretech switch. The Flaretech switch is a little bit more high pitched. So when it comes to total loudness, then the Lekker switch and the bassiness that it has is a little bit more loud than the Flaretech switch at its high. Yeah, when you look at decibels. So Flaretech switch is higher pitch, Lekker switch lower pitch, decibels, Lekker switch a little bit higher than Flaretech switch. That is how I can put it into comparison. When you and this is from sample switches, which don't have our final modifications, but I don't think the modification we're doing is going to have that much of an impact, which is basically where we add 2 little dots onto the stem so that the total contact surface of the stem with the top housing, when it flicks back, is less. So the sound should, in theory, become less, but I think it's not going to make a crazy big difference.
Wow, so many questions, so little time. Maybe we should do like a speed run for the questions, Calder. Is that an idea?
Well, because we have this improvement question as well, right? Let's just focus on the switch questions now, and then we can flow over to the improvement questions.
Okay, okay. Let's go into this one. From Rocky, will the Lekker switches be pre-looped? Because unlike Flaretech, it can't go over the sensors if applied by a machine.
Right, so at this moment, Lekker switches will not be pre-looped. I have already pointed out that knowing the assembly machine, they should be able to pre-lube it. But I'm very doubtful if we can get it through, because right now the more important part is that we have the switch itself, which is the tooling, and having an assembly machine itself. And that in itself is right now the challenge. It's not really a smart idea right now to push them and say, oh, so, there's another improvement you can make. So right now it's not pre-lubed. Is it possible to pre-lube? It should be.
Okay. Question for Frizzy Soda. How does the feel of the Lekker switch compare to the Flaretech switch in the Wooting 2? Does it feel as smooth?
I think you can compare the smoothness. It's fairly the same. I would say it's fairly the same.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, it's not that much different, actually.
No, we did a pretty good job on that. Okay, well, this is a switch question from Dota for Fun. Do you have more plans in the future for Hall effect switches than Wooting 2 Lekker Edition? And I think you're meaning like having more different models than only the Wooting 2? Or different switches? Wait, no, different switches. Switch variation, I guess.
In general, it's the idea that we don't only have one switch type. In fact, I would say that our goal is to when you look at Wooting and our total goal, it's to make analog input the industry standard. And for us internally, it's also the idea that we only keep moving forward. So we keep making improvements and we don't get stuck on one thing. So that means also right now, looking at the Lekker, the Hall effect switch and the analog performance of Hall effect switch, it's also in our best interest and within our goal to say this is the switch that we should start building more on top of, or saying, we should also have different switch variations for the Lekker switch, and we need to make more keyboard models with this switch because this is a very interesting technology which very much aligns with our goal, with Wooting's goal. So on switch level, yes. On keyboard level, yes. Anything concrete that we can share? No. With dates? No. Something you should be really worried about that you're going to miss out? No, because right now we're just working on one thing at a time when it comes to this, when it comes to keyboards right now, which is Wooting 2 Lacquer Edition first at all cost. And then comes other stuff, other Hall effect switch keyboards. Of which the obvious one would be, for example, a Wooting 2, right, with lacquer switches inside, but not a lacquer edition. Just stating the obvious there.
Okay, so now let's finish it off with one loop question. So with the loop situation, if there's no pre-loop, can you supply loop to go along with it?
I think Erik has a very cool answer for that.
Yeah, so we looked into it selling loop earlier this year, and we have found a very nice loop, even though we haven't started selling them in our web shop. And that's something we should actually start doing sooner, because it's like a loop that is also compatible with most switches. I think like every switch out there, mechanical switch. And that's also something we wanted to start selling on the web shop against a fair price, because at the moment all these loop things, they're like insanely priced in all the web shops in Europe at least. Yeah. But it won't be in the packaging. No. But yeah, and another question, yes, you can loop everything yourself if you have the correct loop. But with the FlareTech switches, you should be a bit more careful looping, because you don't want to loop it too much so you cover the prism and you have like a faulty infrared signal. Okay, let's go to the question that has been here for a long time. You mentioned improvements to the lacquer in the blog. Can you say more about it? Can you?
Okay, so in the blog I talk about the PCBA improvements. I assume you're talking about PCBA improvements, because there's only, let's say, there's few areas we can still work on. One of them is the PCBA, because that's kind of like a continuous quest of optimizing hardware. And the second thing is software. And software, thankfully, doesn't have like a hard deadline when it comes to, or for most part, doesn't have a hard deadline when it comes to the project. And it's mostly about preparing the right amount of software for the production and for the launch itself. And then we can start building on top of it. But then when it comes to hardware, at some point we need to settle and say, this is it, right? And that will be it for the next year or maybe 2 years, depending on how things progress. So right now, you compared to this sample I have right here. So this sample has, let's say, what we thought would be the final PCBA. Just maybe this is why I never say this is the final one, because there's a couple of things on the PCBA when it comes to the layout that we want to change, but technically it doesn't change. And on this PCBA, what we basically did is we took what we use on the FlareTech keyboards. And just to give a basic idea is that on FlareTech keyboards, we scan every key, but we scan it in rows by using multiplexers instead of using matrix reading. And matrix reading is kind of like saying if I strike, if the A signal goes on and the free signal goes on, it's this particular key. And because you have this like grid situation now, you don't need to have a connection to each key anymore. Versus what we're doing is saying we have a connection to each key, but it's connected as one row to this, what we call multiplexer, which is then connected to our chip. And then this multiplexer can quickly switch between all the keys very fast. But all the keys are basically connected directly to the MCU in this way. So we did that same thing for Lekker Edition, yeah. But now because it's Hall effect, so it uses Hall effect sensors, it works in a different way. And the Hall effect sensor also brings noise into the game, more noise than what FlareTech switch or what optical switch brought to the game. And this noise means basically when the key is activated, or even when the key is not activated specifically, there's always a fluctuation of what the value is. Okay. And this fluctuation is not a problem. You can have the fluctuation, it's fine. But you need to look at the total amount of signal range that you have. Okay, so if I calculate this from, let me do the most simple way. Let's just say 1 to 100, right? We have 4 millimeter distance. So let's take it very simple, right? That can be like for every millimeter, 25 steps, something like that, right? Every millimeter can have 25 steps, okay? Just oversimplification, right? But if you have noise, right, it means that of the 0 to 100, maybe it fluctuates from 0 to 10, right? So no matter where you are on the 0 to 100, it will fluctuate 10 up and 10 down. And obviously this will effectively decrease your total reading resolution. You'll have less steps now, because if you don't take it into account, your key will keep changing value even if you're not moving it. And that will be translated onto your screen as movement, right? And then you'll get like jitter movements and whatever kind of shit. So there's a couple of ways you can reduce the noise by adding, I can't go too technical because it's not my field, right? So I'm just layman's explanation. You can add some components that can decrease the noise. And the more you decrease the noise, the more resolution you can get out of the 0 to 100. So the thing that Jeroen is working on right now, so the keyboard I have right here right now, let's say, is the 0 to 100 with reduced noise. And let's say the noise is like, I don't know, 5 or something, right? So it fluctuates with 5. But what Jeroen has done now, after using this PCBA for a while, is looked at, okay, two things. One, how can we increase the 0 to 100 to maybe from 0 to 200? So there's more bigger steps that can be made, and that noise of 5, has less impact on the steps. So in that way, you can increase the amount of steps. And the second thing that he's trying out is there's another way we can decrease the noise from 5 maybe to like 2.5. So these are kind of in a very an oversimplification of what we're trying to do right now with the PCBA, and what Jeroen is looking at how we can improve it. Then are there other improvements? No. This is kind of where we're limiting the improvements, because everything else has to stay final, so we can quickly switch to a production moment.
Can't wait for that.
Oh my God, was that like a super... this is the first time that I've tried to explain this.
If Jeroen is watching, he's probably crying now.
Yeah, he'll probably be crying. Yeah. I need to explain this a couple more times, and then I'll probably come up with a better way of explaining it. But hopefully that was clear enough. Yeah.
This is also an interesting question, but totally off topic. Are we still on the Lekker topic, or was that sort of over? Because it's, have to...
We're still lekkering right now, right? Okay, I see why you're saying that. Didn't we have more questions related to Lekker?
No, no, not really.
Okay, then there's this question from Quasardian about would it be possible to add noise dampening material in the hollow bottom case?
Mm-hmm.
The answer to that is yes. Yes, it is. And there's actually some people that have already done that. before, which I think you can also see on the Reddit. I think there is a...
There are multiple guides for it, I guess, out there. Some users of the Wooting use different...
I think there was a wiki on Reddit. Oh, well, that's disappointing. I thought it was here in the wiki. Maybe I added it to the knowledge base. Oh, here we go. I added to the knowledge base. There we go. You can go to this link and you can find some examples of what other people did. But the basic idea is that you want to fill the hollow space underneath the PCBA with whatever you want. You can basically use whatever as long as you fill up the space. And of course, the material has some difference, but filling up the space itself already makes a difference.
Don't use water.
Except for liquids, then, yeah.
Okay, so this is also a very interesting question from Roadkiller again. Do you plan on producing extra keycaps to sell? I would be grateful for a French set available for purchase, for example. Well, you sort of missed the boat there because we did. We started selling the lacquer keycaps separately, and we got some feedback from the community and people who pre-ordered the keyboard, and not everybody was happy about it, and it felt that this was an integral part of the whole lacquer edition, and that's why we stopped selling them the extra keycaps, so they won't be available. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But you
and then
can
I also
still
have to say that the French layout is a very difficult layout to provide, unless you specifically, if we do PBT die sublimation, it's more feasible, of course, to do it. But the French language layout is very hard to combine with other languages. You can't just add some extra keys and then voila, you have a French layout. There's a lot of different keys on the French layout compared to other European layouts. Yeah.
True. Oh, this one is also very interesting. Will the RGB sync with other gaming companies or something like Philips Hue in the future? At the moment, we don't have a native thing going on, but we do make use of the Razer. I forgot the name. The Razer Chroma program.
Yeah, Razer Chroma.
Yeah, the Razer Chroma. So you can download Razer Synapse, and then in the utility you can activate the Razer Synapse link, and then you can use it the same way you can use it as with Razer products. So your keyboard can react to different scenarios in games, and it can sync multiple Razer products. So it's sort of what you're looking for, but it's also limited. It's not like the full thing you can get. Who uses Razer Synapse anyway? Well, I do, because I cannot play Dead Cells without my RGB effects. Which is pretty cool. And then again, I mean, it's more of a wow factor and a cool factor, and more of a novelty than it actually has any use. But you know, it's possible with the Razer Synapse if you're into it.
I have to ask you something, by the way. What is this redeemed highlight my message?
Yeah.
Just sharing here, we're total Twitch noobs. We're going to answer this question.
No, it's. I mean, if you watch the channel, you can get channel points, and channel points you can spend to do different things. And at the moment, only highlight my messages there for 100 points, which is accumulated pretty fast, which is interesting. But this is also something we need to tweak, to be honest. See what other streamers do. It's pretty cool. Yeah.
Let's do the question.
Okay, the super highlight question. What testing methodology do you use to determine the performance of analog switch if you were to test a switch of a competitor?
Now, I can't show you the exact machine. Oh, you can actually.
It's top secret. No, it isn't.
No. It's not like that. No, so when we do our own testing with our own keyboard, usually it starts off with the very, let's say, native test. And what Jeroen does is, so, okay, for example, with the Lekker switch, right? We have the switch, we have a sensor, and then this is with a current connected to the MCU. Yeah, to the MCU, okay, for example. When you press the key, the sensor will change the current, or will change the voltage of the current, okay? And you can measure the change. So, and the way you measure the change is by, which is in this blog that I'm going to link in a minute, the keyboard input speed blog. No, mine is not on the top anymore. What's this? Okay, this one. It's this blog. You need to scroll all the way down until you see this, how Wooting measures input latency. Basically what you see there is a device which you can basically, with the, let's say with the pin, you can touch the current and it will measure how much voltage is going through the current. And that will be displayed on your screen. Okay, so when pressing the switch, the voltage will change. This is displayed on your screen, and in this way, wow, analog signal, right? Now you can start adding things. So you can, when you say, let's say, add some components to decrease the noise, or you have different sensor for maybe larger range, right? You can just measure at a different spot, a different point of the current where you will just measure the voltage, because the voltage is what decides the analog signal. And you'll see that it goes from, for example, from 3.3 voltage to 0.3 voltage or something like that. And then the second part of doing this is that, of course, you want to know how far down are you pressing the key while measuring the voltage, right? And that's how you can determine how much steps do you have in your analog range, let's say, or how does the pressing the key translate into changes into the signal. And that's where we have this device for, right? So this is a digital one. This is a digital one. And this is a, I don't know, what do you call it in English? Een hoogtemeter.
A height measurement tool.
Yeah, height measurement tool. So here, I think the battery is, yeah, I took out the battery. I think it's empty. I always switch it around, but okay, I'm not going to turn it on now then. But this is like 0.001 millimeter precise, I think it was. Anyway, it's pretty freaking precise. And then you can 0.01 millimeter step. You can make 0.01 millimeter steps down, basically. Height gauge. There we go. Or caliper, I think, is even better.
Hoogtemeter. That's a hoogtemeter.
Yeah. So you can make 0.01 millimeter steps down, and this is how you press the switch. So you go 0.1 millimeter down. You look at the voltage, write it down, and then you can, from distance to voltage, you can make a graph, and that's how you know what the analog signal is. That's a very native way of doing it, and you can do that also on your competitor keyboards,
But
because you can just measure it from the PCBA.
During a mass production, are you guys measuring every switch that way?
No, we're not.
Oh, how are you doing it then?
So the more convenient way, and the way we do it internally usually, is that so after you kind of surpass this step, what you do next is you change the voltage into a digital signal, and you translate that onto your screen into certain values, okay? And so what Jeroen does, for example, is he changes the voltage changes and the noise, take everything into account. He changes this in the software into a linear from 0 to 255 steps curve, okay? A linear curve from 0 to 255, and then from 0 to 4 millimeter pressing curve, okay? The 255 steps, right, can also be 500, 750, 1000. You can go 2000, whatever you want, right? It'll just take more memory. The real question is, does it have an impact or not, okay? So he'll do that, and then what you then can do is still use this one, but you don't need to have the PCBA out in the open. You can just press the key on the keyboard and then go per step down and write down the values. And then you can calculate backwards. That value correlates with this voltage, basically. But in this case, you're just looking at those values to verify what you need to verify. And then when it comes to mass production, it's even more simple. You don't need this one. With Lecker Edition, you don't need that one.
Nope.
With Lecker Edition and with the Lecker switch, because we can measure the starting point and we can measure the ending point, we always know when the first change in the signal happens, you're at the beginning of the press. When the last change of the signal happens, or the lowest, you're at the end of the press. So in a mass production, that basically means that an operator just needs to press every key down. And then through software, we will measure, through software, we can see, okay, it started here, it ended there, are these values within our specifications, yes or no? Okay, and that's the part that we cannot do with competitors. Competitors, we can only just, measure on the PCBA. That's like a pretty complete answer, right?
Yes. Well, you didn't mention the analog testing machine, but hey.
Oh, right. That will complete the story, right? On our FlareTech keyboards, there's a problem. We don't know exactly when the starting point is, and we don't know exactly where the ending point is. Because now, when the first signal change happens, the first change in the signal happens, you can't be it's not the start of the press, because the signal usually starts changing around 1.5 millimeters. But because you have tolerances in the switch, the lenses, because of all the different cavity molds, it will be maybe one will be 1.3, other one might be 1.6 millimeter. So you don't know when the change happens, is that 1.3, 4, 5, or 6 millimeter, right? And that's a problem, because now you don't know the start of the press. You can know the end of the press maybe, but you don't know where the start of the press is. So what we have for the FlareTech keyboards is literally a machine which basically does this, but on every key of the keyboard, okay? It goes in this case it goes,
0.01 steps.
Yeah, it can do 0.01, but it goes through it pretty fast. And you can say it makes 0.1 millimeter steps very fast, on every key of the keyboard. And our software basically reads the machine that says, okay, now it's at this position, it reads the machine to look at which position is it at, and it reads the keyboard, what is the signal it's giving me? And then when the keyboard says, hey, my signal's changing, it looks at the machine, this is 1.4 millimeters, for example, and then we have a starting point. And then we'll start reading until the end point, and then again we can say, okay, is this within our specifications, yes or no? Wow.
Okay, let's go through the last few questions, Caller, and then we
It's
wrap
pretty
it up.
crazy that we're even doing that. Now that I think about it.
Yes. So now we go through the last couple of questions, and we're gonna wrap the stream. So if you have any more questions, be sure to hit us up now. Okay, another one from Bigfoot. With hot swappable switches, are there any plans to sell or include spare lacquer switches in the event of a faulty switch on the lacquer edition keyboard? Yes. So you will get some extra switches in your packaging as spare parts, and probably in the future we will start selling them also separately, and we will always have them available for RMA cases. So if a switch breaks, then hit us up, and if it's within the warranty scope, we will replace it.
Yeah.
This question I like. It's a question for you, Calder. Who designed the Wooting logo? It's beautiful, simple, and sophisticated. I love it.
Eric is waiting for a compliment.
Oh,
we're not allowed to tell them the secret now, Eric, because that will kind of like ruin his opinion. Okay. Eric designed the logo. Eric designed the logo. So, and I'll just say Eric designed the logo, and it took a while, right? There was a lot of iterations, disagreements here and there, and then it was like,
So now you think like, what does the logo mean? You know, is the W for Wooting in a box, or is it like a sort of abbreviation of a switch? But it's actually like the three of us, Carl, and I, we're both like one stream of the W, and we come together to form this beautiful Wooting. Wow.
I see. Eric's trying to string a very big bullshit design story.
No, I think it took way too long to come up with a proper logo. I tried many different things. In the end, this was made pretty fast, and I liked it, how it looked. Carlo was sort of done with it, and with the idea, well, it will probably grow.
Now you're downplaying it.
Yeah, but this is it. Yeah, but in the end, I'm pretty happy with it. Looking back at it, it could have been a bit different, but I'm also not complaining.
I guess when we started doing the logo stuff, the most difficult part was that we really wanted something very simple and minimalistic, but somehow it still needed to convey a message. And I don't know. Wow, we should look back at like your old iterations, like before it came to that final one.
Yeah, that's horrible.
Because at some point you had like a rough iteration of what it is now, and then it was just like change, and then it became this. Yeah, I thought the logo was a crown because Wooting is kings of keyboard. So yeah, okay.
It's also not a bullshit story.
Yeah.
We have a Brad guide, and I explained the logo there, and that is also one of the scenarios I came up with.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny with logo design. So if you're an actual designer, you know, and you have a customer who wants a logo, then you need to have a bullshit story what it means, right? So the customer thinks like, "Whoa, this is so amazing that you thought about it. I've never seen it." But you know, if you just make your own logo for your own company, you like, you know, you just like it, and there isn't any deeper meaning behind the logo. But you can make up different meanings behind the logo, so that's pretty cool.
I guess at best you could say that the let's say the crown or the W in the logo, it was inspired by the W of the Wooting. I guess that's at best what you could say. And otherwise you could say it's a flipped E from Eric.
Ah, yes.
That's how desperate he was.
That's what I was. Flipped E. Okay. Completely unrelated. Will another Wooting meetup happen this year or next year? I think we mentioned it in the last live stream. So this year there won't be a physical meetup because of the whole COVID-19 going on. We had something planned by the end of May or the beginning of May. We scrapped it because it's not really smart to do it in these times. But we will have a sort of digital fun day with everyone, remotely on a distance, and that's something that will come up within the next few months. But so we will have a Wootup this year, but a digital version, and then probably next year we will have a new physical version. Okay, another switch question. Is there a good way to dampen lacquer switches without losing the bottom of the key press? I don't think you do you need to dampen them? Yeah.
I think you could. I think lubing is the first thing you need to try. In general, that's nice. Let's say if you want to actually add material inside the switch to dampen it, you'd want to do it on the top case, just like what I explained with the cherry switch, because the return of the key actually makes the most noise because the spring it jumps back up to its position and hits the upper case. But the problem is, let's say, regardless if you add material on the bottom or the top, it will influence your analog signal. But the thing is, right now, the thing I just can't answer right now because we're not that far yet, is that obviously the point with lacquer addition, with the lacquer switch, is that you should be able to tweak in the software when does your switch start and when does it end. So even if you add, let's say, some material to the bottom or the top, effectively decreasing the range, in the software you should be able to change, hey, start doing something at a later point, right? So the signal let's say you put material on the top of the switch will already be depressed a bit, and the signal should already be already changed, right? So it's already actively reading this change. But in the software, you should be able to say, don't do anything with it. Don't start until X point, right? 0.5 millimeter, for example. But right now, I just don't want to say that. I don't want to say yes until we're closer to that point. But yeah.
Okay.
With lacquer switch, that should be possible.
So the last two questions are a bit hefty topics, so don't talk too long about it, Calder. And step first. Could there be any interference in the Hall effect of the lacquer switch? I'm thinking especially on smartwatches, electronics, etc. I think Average Cool. No, who was it? Somebody. Yeah, I think Average Cool sort of responded to it in the chat. I mean, the things we have noticed is that we didn't find any interference unless you have like extremely strong magnets being put on your keyboard or whatever, but that's just in our environment and it's very difficult to it's difficult to pinpoint anything that can make interference in our own environments, because when you have the keyboards at places at people's home, it's going to be different everywhere, and maybe somebody has some weird stuff going on, like rare earth vibrations or whatever, but overall we haven't seen anything that significantly interfered with the Hall effect. No, nothing yet.
Yeah.
So that's why we're also assuming that
I thought maybe I could show a test, but
don't do it.
I have these couple of I have some couple different magnets, but
okay.
I should have had it prepared. Then would have been a bit more smooth.
Maybe during the next stream, it's fun to show. And this is also something that is very interesting to talk about it, and we can talk a lot about it. But it's is there any scientific research you are doing, or any research that you are aware of being done on your keyboards? Yes, there are. Yes.
Actually, we have like two different scenarios. One scenario is where they do reach out to us. They reach out to us. We send over sample keyboards, and we just want to be in the loop. And then we have another scenario where suddenly a university buys 6 keyboards, and we're like, oh, where is this coming from? And they're probably doing some kind of research. But I think in all cases for the scientific research, the keyboards that we have right now, the Flacta keyboards we have right now, they are you can use them for different scenarios, but they are not good enough for solid results for scientific research. I think I should put it that way. And that's because of the range limitation. The range limitation kind of limits the amount of possibilities and reliability of the research. And with the Hall effect switches, that's going to be a totally different story. And then if to give you an idea of the type of research, I think there's, for example, people doing biometric data, multiple people doing biometric data, but they are doing it for different reasons. And there is, in general, I'm just to generalize it, then there's also research in
speed.
People that just look in general at human interface devices and how you can interact with them in general. And that is sometimes directed into different ways. So I think that would kind of round up most of the research. Either it's human interface devices, looking at how you can use this in general in different applications, and then in a very broad sense, music, for example, or a very broad sense, how input works in general. And then you have people doing more research focused on biometric data, which is basically, can I read a unique can I read a unique signature from a person based on his typing behavior, which can be used for a lot of different things.
Yeah. And that's it. There's only one question left in the queue.
Okay.
It's from Wooting Live. Eric School. Oh, thank you. Thank you. I mean, there are some more questions in the chat, but I think we should round it up and come back with your questions within 2 weeks, because else the stream will never end, and there's so much more to do today. I think it was today a fun live stream. We had some great improvements with the questions going on. I really liked it, how it looked. We will look into the channel points and make some cool, add some cool things. And next week we will have within 2 weeks, I'll make sure there are some cool custom emotes going on, so we become like Twitch pros.
Twitch pros.
Yeah, thanks everyone for participating. I enjoyed it. Anything you want to add, Calder?
To add?
Mm-hmm.
Without answering a question?
Without answer, that's not allowed anymore.
Okay. Then the whole live stream will be on YouTube afterwards. Did you say that?
Yes. No. Oh, one
thing. You didn't, right? Okay.
Sorry, Daryl. I only added one stream marker.
Oh no!
Sorry. Well, it was fun anyway. Hope to see you guys again in 2 weeks, and enjoy your weekend. Stay safe. Stay at home. Bye bye.
Be safe. Stay home. Bye bye.